Commander Vexthor stood before the Galactic Council, his crystalline eyes fixed on the lone human in the detention field. Marcus Kane, the human, returned his gaze with defiant silence. The charges were clear: destruction of a mining colony, theft of Void-class technology, and assault on 3 Council enforcers. Human Kane, Vexthor's translator crackled, "Your species is new to the galactic community. You clearly do not understand the severity of your crimes." Marcus said nothing. He'd been set up, framed by a corrupt traitor who'd vanished with a shipment of medical supplies meant for Earth's outer colonies. But no one would believe a human over an established council member. "The council has deliberated," Vexthor continued, his mandibles clicking with what might have been satisfaction. "Execution would be messy. Political complications with your homeworld. Instead, we offer you a chance at redemption." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Nothing about Vexthor's tone suggested mercy. "You will be transported to Kragath Prime," Vexthor announced. The chamber fell silent. Even the other prisoners in their detention field seemed to recoil. "You will retrieve a sample of void crystal from the central spire. Return with it, and your crimes are forgiven. Your record, wiped clean." "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Then you will be executed immediately." Vexthor's eyes gleamed. "Though I suspect death here would be more merciful." Marcus had heard whispers about Kragath Prime in station bars and cargo holds. A dead world, they called it. Not dead because it was barren, but because nothing that went there ever came back. Ancient ruins covered its surface, and something lurked in those ruins. Something that had destroyed 3 alien expeditions and a military reconnaissance team. The council was sending him to die, but doing it in a way that wouldn't create an interstellar incident. "How long do I have?" Marcus asked. 30 planetary cycles, Vexthor replied. "A transport will take you to Kragath Prime. You will be provided with basic survival equipment and a distress beacon. The beacon will activate automatically after 30 cycles, and we will retrieve you, or what remains of you." The other council members, representing a dozen different species, watched with expressions ranging from pity to cruel amusement. This was entertainment for them. The human would die screaming on that forsaken world, and they would all deny responsibility. Marcus nodded slowly. "I accept." Vexthor's mandibles clicked again. "Bold. Foolish, but bold. May your death be swift, human." As the guards led him away, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in a polished wall. His jaw was set, his eyes hard. They wanted him to die. Fine. But he'd survive out of pure spite if nothing else. He'd walk back into this chamber and shove that void crystal down Vexthor's throat. The transport bay was cold and empty except for a small, battered ship and a pile of equipment that looked like it had been salvaged from a scrapyard. Marcus Kane was about to enter hell itself. But he'd be damned if he'd let them win. The descent through Kragath Prime's atmosphere was violent enough to rattle Marcus's teeth. The automated transport shuttle had all the grace of a falling brick, and its pilot AI seemed more interested in completing its mission quickly than keeping its passenger comfortable. Through the viewport, Marcus caught his first glimpse of his prison. Kragath Prime was a world of purples and blacks, its sky churning with storms that seemed to rage without end. The surface was covered in massive structures, towers, temples, and bridges built from some dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Approaching designated drop zone, the AI announced in flat, emotionless tones. "Warning, atmospheric anomalies detected. Electromagnetic interference severe. Local fauna readings. Error. Readings exceed sensor parameters." "That's comforting," Marcus muttered, checking his gear for the 100th time. They'd given him a survival suit, a plasma cutter, 3 days of rations, and a tent that looked like it would collapse in a strong breeze. No weapons, of course. The council wanted this to be sporting. The shuttle touched down in a clearing surrounded by the ancient ruins. The moment the hatch opened, Marcus felt the weight of the place. The air was thick and humid, carrying strange scents, ozone, decay, and something else he couldn't identify. The sounds were worse, distant howls, clicking noises, and a low rumbling that seemed to come from the planet itself. He stepped onto the dark soil, and the shuttle immediately launched back into the sky, abandoning him. Marcus activated his scanner, searching for the central spire Vexthor had mentioned. The device flickered erratically, the electromagnetic interference playing havoc with its systems. But he managed to get a general direction before it died completely. 30 days, he said to himself. The spire is 20 kilometers northeast. I can do this. The first day was almost peaceful. He navigated through the ruins carefully, marveling at their construction. Whatever species had built these structures, they'd been giants. Doorways towered 15 meters high, and the corridors were wide enough to drive a vehicle through. But there were signs of violence everywhere. Scorch marks on the walls, massive gouges in the stone, and dried stains that might have been blood, though what color it had been originally, Marcus couldn't tell. On the second day, he found the first bodies. They were Vorlak warriors, one of the toughest species in the galaxy. Their armored bodies were torn apart, scattered across a wide plaza. Marcus examined them carefully, noting the claw marks, the bite radius, the sheer force required to rip through Vorlak armor. Whatever had killed them was massive, powerful, and efficient. That night, Marcus made camp in a partially collapsed building, using the rubble to create a defensive position. He didn't dare light a fire. Instead, he ate a cold ration bar and tried to rest, knowing sleep would be difficult. He was right. The howls started just after dark, echoing through the ruins. They came from multiple directions, sometimes near, sometimes far. Marcus gripped his plasma cutter, meant for cutting through debris, but it might work as a weapon in a pinch, and watched the darkness. Around midnight, he saw it for the first time. A shape moved through the ruins, massive and silent. It passed through a shaft of moonlight for just a moment, and Marcus's blood turned to ice. It stood at least 5 meters tall at the shoulder, its body covered in armored plates. Its head was all teeth and horns, and its eyes. Its eyes glowed with an intelligence that was somehow worse than mindless hunger. The creature paused, its head swinging in his direction. Marcus held his breath, staying perfectly still. After an eternity, the beast moved on, disappearing into the darkness. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Because he'd just seen the thing that had destroyed 3 expeditions. And he had 28 days left to survive. By the 5th day, Marcus understood why no one returned from Kragath Prime. The creatures, he'd started calling them reavers, hunted in patterns that suggested tactical thinking. They drove prey toward kill zones, used the ruins to set up ambushes, and seemed to communicate through a series of clicks and growls that echoed through the ancient structures. He'd encountered 3 of them so far, always at a distance. Each time, he'd managed to hide or evade, using his smaller size and knowledge of human guerrilla tactics. But it was only a matter of time before his luck ran out. The central spire loomed larger now, visible over the ruins. It was a massive obelisk of black crystal that seemed to pulse with inner light. The void crystal Vexthor wanted came from there. Marcus just had to reach it, extract a sample, and somehow survive the return journey. Simple, he thought bitterly. He was crossing a wide courtyard when his instincts screamed danger. Marcus dove behind a fallen pillar just as something massive crashed into the ground where he'd been standing. The impact sent up a cloud of dust and debris. A reaver stepped into view, this one larger than the others he'd seen. It was at least 6 meters tall, its armored hide covered in scars from countless battles. Fresh blood stained its claws, some other creature's last moments. The reaver sniffed the air, its intelligent eyes scanning the courtyard. Marcus held perfectly still, his plasma cutter powered down to avoid detection. The creature moved closer, its heavy footfalls shaking the ground. Then it paused, head tilting as if listening. Without warning, it spun around, facing the opposite direction. Marcus heard it too, another sound, smaller, coming from the ruins behind the reaver. A younger reaver emerged, perhaps half the size of the adult. It limped badly, one of its legs torn and bleeding. The small reaver made a pitiful clicking sound, a call for help. The adult's reaction was immediate. It moved to the youngster, lowering its massive head to examine the wound. The gentleness in its movements was startling. This wasn't a mindless monster, it was a parent protecting its child. Marcus watched, fascinated despite his terror. The adult reaver cleaned the wound carefully, its massive tongue surprisingly delicate. Then it looked up, eyes sweeping the ruins, searching for whatever had hurt its offspring. A roar split the air, and a third reaver charged into the courtyard. This one was different, its hide was darker, almost black, and it moved with a predator's confidence. It was challenging the adult, Marcus realized. Challenging it for territory, for dominance, or perhaps for the right to the kill that was the injured youngster. The adult reaver positioned itself between the challenger and its offspring, growling a warning. The challenger didn't back down. It lunged, claws extended. What followed was the most brutal fight Marcus had ever witnessed. The two giants crashed together with a sound like thunder, tearing at each other with claws and teeth. They smashed through ancient pillars, sent chunks of stone flying, and filled the air with their roars. The adult was stronger, but the challenger was faster. It darted in, opening wounds on the adult's flanks, then danced away before retaliation could land. The adult bled from a dozen cuts, its movements slowing. The youngster tried to help, limping forward on its injured leg. The challenger saw the movement and changed targets, lunging at the easier prey. The adult threw itself into the path, taking the blow meant for its child. The challenger's claws raked across the adult's face, narrowly missing an eye. But the adult's jaws found purchase, clamping down on the challenger's throat. The fight ended quickly after that. The challenger thrashed, trying to break free, but the adult's grip was inexorable. Bones cracked. The thrashing became twitches. Then stillness. The adult reaver released its dead opponent and collapsed, breathing heavily. Blood pooled beneath it. The youngster clicked frantically, nuzzling against its parent. Marcus made a decision that his rational mind screamed was insane. He powered up his plasma cutter, set it to its lowest setting, and stepped into the open. Both reavers' heads snapped toward him. The adult tried to rise but fell back, too injured to move. The youngster positioned itself protectively over its parent, growling despite its own injuries. "Easy," Marcus said softly, knowing they couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would convey his intent. "I'm here to help." He approached slowly, hands visible, the plasma cutter held non-threateningly. The youngster's growls intensified, but it didn't attack. It couldn't, Marcus realized. It was barely standing. Marcus knelt beside the adult reaver, examining its wounds. Deep cuts, significant blood loss, but nothing immediately fatal if treated. He pulled out his medical kit, basic supplies meant for humans, but the principles of first aid were universal. The adult reaver watched him with those disturbingly intelligent eyes as Marcus began to work. Working on the reaver was like trying to perform surgery on a living tank. Its hide was tough enough that Marcus had to use his plasma cutter at its lowest setting just to seal the worst of the bleeding wounds. The creature flinched but didn't strike at him, seemingly understanding that he was trying to help. The youngster watched every move Marcus made, occasionally clicking softly. It was clearly distressed, worried about its parent. Marcus found himself talking to them both as he worked, his voice low and soothing. "That's it, easy now. This is going to hurt, but it'll stop the bleeding. Your kid is right here, watching over you. Brave little thing, isn't it? Well, little is relative. It's still bigger than a cargo shuttle." The adult's breathing steadied as Marcus worked. He used nearly all his medical supplies, bandages, antiseptic foam, even his emergency blood clotter. He wasn't sure if the clotter would work on alien biology, but the alternative was watching the creature bleed out. When he finished, Marcus sat back, exhausted. The adult Reaver lifted its head, examining itself. Then it looked at Marcus with an expression he could have sworn was gratitude. The youngster limped over to Marcus, its earlier hostility gone. It nudged his shoulder with its massive head, nearly knocking him over. Marcus laughed despite himself and reached up to touch the creature's snout. Its hide was warm, covered in fine scales that felt like rough leather. "Yeah, you're welcome," Marcus said. "Now, about my situation. I need to get to that spire, grab a crystal, and get off this planet. You two wouldn't happen to know a safe route, would you?" The adult Reaver rumbled, a sound that vibrated through Marcus's chest. It rose slowly, testing its injuries. The creature was weakened but mobile. It made a series of clicks and growls to the youngster, who responded in kind. Then the adult did something that shocked Marcus. It lowered itself to the ground, its massive shoulders level with Marcus's chest. The youngster clicked excitedly, bumping Marcus toward its parent. "You want me to?" Marcus gestured at the adult's back. "You're offering me a ride?" The adult rumbled again, unmistakably affirmative. Marcus climbed onto the Reaver's back carefully, finding handholds between the armored plates. The creature rose smoothly, and suddenly Marcus was 6 meters off the ground, seeing the ruins from a completely different perspective. The adult Reaver began to move, with the youngster limping alongside. They didn't head directly for the spire. Instead, they took a winding path through the ruins, avoiding certain areas entirely. Ambush points, Marcus realized. Kill zones where other Reavers waited. The adult knew the territory and was guiding him through safely. Over the next several days, Marcus's relationship with the Reavers deepened. The adult, Marcus started calling him Titan, proved to be an efficient hunter. He brought down prey that resembled six-legged deer, sharing the meat with Marcus and the youngster. Marcus cooked his portions, earning curious looks from both creatures. The youngster, Marcus dubbed her Scout, recovered quickly. Her leg healed with the resilience of youth, and she began exploring with increasing confidence. She seemed fascinated by Marcus, often bringing him objects she found, interesting rocks, bits of technology from previous expeditions, once even a human skull that made Marcus's stomach turn. Titan taught Marcus how to survive on Kragath Prime. Through gestures and repetition, the Reaver showed him which water sources were safe, which ruins to avoid, and how to read the signs that other Reavers left to mark their territory. Marcus realized these creatures had a complex society, with hierarchies, territories, and communication methods that rivaled any species he'd encountered. They reached the base of the central spire on the 12th day. The structure towered above them, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move in Marcus's peripheral vision. The void crystal pulsed within, visible through translucent sections of the obelisk. Titan stopped at the entrance, refusing to go farther. He growled a warning, and Scout pressed against her father's side, clearly frightened. "Something inside?" Marcus asked. "Something that scares even you?" Titan's expression confirmed it. Whatever dwelt within the spire was dangerous enough to make a creature that had killed the Challenger think twice. Marcus checked his equipment. He had 18 days left on his beacon. The council expected him dead, probably were already celebrating their clever solution to the human problem. He looked at Titan and Scout, these impossible companions he'd gained in the galaxy's most hostile environment. "I have to go in," Marcus said. "I need that crystal to go home. But I'll come back out. I promise." Titan rumbled, a sound of concern. Scout clicked anxiously. Marcus scratched Scout's snout, then patted Titan's massive shoulder. "Wait for me. If I'm not back in 3 days. He paused. "Well, you two will be fine. You've got each other." He turned toward the spire's entrance, squared his shoulders, and walked into the darkness. Behind him, Titan released a long, mournful howl that echoed across the ruins. The hunt was over. Now came the real test. The interior of the spire was nothing like Marcus expected. Instead of the darkness he'd anticipated, the space was illuminated by the same pulsing glow he'd seen from outside. The void crystal, he realized, was everywhere. It grew from the walls like luminescent veins, casting everything in shifting shades of purple and blue. But the beauty was offset by the horror. Bones littered the floor, hundreds of them, from dozens of different species. Some were massive, reaver-sized. Others were small, delicate, clearly intelligent species that had come here seeking the crystal's power. All had died. Marcus moved carefully, his plasma cutter humming softly in his hand. The air inside was different, charged with energy that made his hair stand on end and his skin prickle. Each breath tasted metallic. The spire's interior was a spiral, winding upward around a central column of pure void crystal. Marcus followed the path, noting the defensive positions carved into the walls. This place had been designed to be defended, which meant whatever lived here had enemies. Or had been the enemy. He was 3 levels up when he heard it, a sound like crystal chimes mixed with a low, rumbling purr. Marcus froze, every instinct screaming danger. A shape emerged from the shadows above. At first, Marcus thought it was another reaver. But as it descended, he realized this creature was something else entirely. It had the same basic structure, 4 legs, armored hide, predatory build, but its body was partially translucent, shot through with veins of void crystal. Its eyes glowed with the same purple light, and when it moved, afterimages trailed behind it like it existed slightly out of phase with reality. A crystal guardian, Marcus thought. The spire's protector. The guardian stalked toward him, its movements eerily silent despite its massive size. Marcus raised his plasma cutter, knowing it would be useless. This thing had probably killed hundreds of armed warriors. What chance did he have? The guardian lunged. Marcus dove aside, rolling across the floor. The creature's claws struck where he'd been, sending up sparks. Marcus scrambled behind a crystal formation, buying himself seconds. He couldn't fight this thing. But maybe he didn't have to. Marcus studied the guardian as it circled, looking for an opening. The crystal veins in its body pulsed in a rhythm, slower when it was calm, faster when agitated. It was connected to the spire, Marcus realized. Drawing power from it, but also bound to it. An idea formed, desperate and probably suicidal. Marcus ran, not away from the guardian but toward the central column. The creature roared and gave chase, its speed terrifying. Marcus reached the column and pressed his hand against the crystal. Energy surged into him, overwhelming, threatening to burn him from the inside out. He screamed but held on, feeling the connection the guardian had to the spire. And then he pushed his own consciousness into that connection. For a moment, Marcus existed in multiple places at once. He felt the guardian's rage, its duty, its loneliness. This creature had been here for millennia, protecting the spire from those who would steal its power. It didn't hate the intruders, it pitted them. They came seeking power and found only death. But in that connection, Marcus also felt something else. The guardian was tired. So very tired. It wanted rest, release from its eternal vigil. Marcus showed it his own memories. Earth. The stars. Titan and Scout. He showed it why he needed the crystal, not for power, but for freedom. He showed it the injustice of the council, the setup, the death sentence disguised as a trial. The guardian hesitated, its glowing eyes fixed on Marcus. Then, slowly, it backed away. The creature moved to the central column, pressing its head against the crystal. The veins in its body began to dim, and Marcus understood. The guardian was releasing him from the spire's defense. But there was a price. Marcus felt it through the connection. If he took the crystal, the guardian's power would fade. It might not survive without the spire's full energy. The creature knew this and was willing to pay that price. No, Marcus said aloud. There has to be another way. He thought frantically, searching through his limited knowledge of crystalline structures and energy systems. Then it came to him, a crazy idea, but it might work. Marcus pulled out his plasma cutter and began to carefully cut a small piece of crystal from a secondary vein, one not directly connected to the Guardian's life force. It was slow work, and the Guardian watched with what might have been curiosity. Finally, Marcus held a fragment of void crystal the size of his fist. It pulsed with the same energy as the main column but wouldn't fatally weaken the structure. Through their connection, Marcus felt the Guardian's approval. The creature approached him, lowering its head. For a moment, Marcus thought it might kill him anyway. Instead, the Guardian touched its snout to Marcus's forehead. Energy flowed between them, knowledge, understanding, a gift. Marcus gasped as information flooded his mind, the true nature of the void crystal, its potential uses, and the location of other fragments scattered across Kragath Prime. When the Guardian pulled away, Marcus staggered, his mind reeling. The creature made a sound like crystal chimes, laughter, Marcus realized. Then it faded back into the shadows, returning to its eternal watch. Marcus descended the spire on shaking legs, clutching his prize. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Titan and Scout were waiting at the entrance, exactly where he'd left them. When they saw him emerge, Scout rushed forward, nearly bowling him over with her enthusiasm. Titan approached more sedately but with obvious relief. Marcus held up the crystal. Got it. Now we just need to survive the trip back to the landing zone. Titan rumbled and turned, presenting his back. Marcus climbed up, settling into the familiar position between the armored plates. They had 10 days left. 10 days to cross hostile territory, avoid other Reavers, and reach the extraction point. 10 days to prepare for Marcus's return to the Council. And this time, he wouldn't be alone. The trip back was everything Marcus had feared and nothing he'd expected. With Titan and Scout as his companions, the dangerous ruins of Kragath Prime became manageable, almost mundane. Other Reavers gave them wide berth once they caught Titan's scent, the alpha male's dominance was recognized and respected. But the true threats came from other sources. On the third day of their return journey, they encountered a nest of spine serpents, creatures like massive centipedes with crystalline spines that they could launch like projectiles. The serpents had claimed a narrow canyon, the only viable path back to the landing zone. Titan and Scout worked together with Marcus to clear the nest. Marcus used his plasma cutter to seal the nest's exit holes, forcing the serpents out, while Titan and Scout picked them off one by one. It was brutal, efficient teamwork that left Marcus marveling at how well they'd learned to coordinate with him. During their rest periods, Marcus worked on a harness for Scout. The youngster had taken to following him everywhere, and Marcus had an idea that was either brilliant or insane, probably both. If he was going to walk back into the council chamber, he wanted to make a statement they'd never forget. He used salvaged materials from the ruins, reinforced with strips from his survival suit, creating something that would allow Scout to carry equipment. The youngster submitted to being fitted with surprising patience, though she did try to eat the harness twice. "You're going to help me show those council bastards that humans don't die easily," Marcus told her as he adjusted the straps. Scout clicked happily, not understanding the words but responding to his tone. Titan watched these preparations with what Marcus had learned to recognize as approval. The massive Reaver had proven himself to be not just intelligent but wise, making decisions that prioritized the group's long-term survival over short-term comfort. On the 7th day, they reached the landing zone. Marcus's beacon would activate in 3 days, automatically signaling for retrieval. They made camp in the same clearing where the shuttle had dropped him off, which now felt like a lifetime ago. Marcus spent those final days preparing. He created a crude shelter for Titan and Scout, though both seemed confused by the concept. He gathered samples of Kragath Prime's flora and fauna, evidence of the planet's ecosystem that the Council had dismissed as merely hostile. And he practiced his speech, the words he'd say to vex Thor and the others. The night before extraction, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat with his back against Titan's side, the massive Reaver's warmth keeping the cold at bay. Scout dozed nearby, occasionally twitching in her sleep. I'm going to miss this, Marcus said quietly. Is that crazy? This planet tried to kill me every day, but somehow. I'm going to miss it. Titan rumbled, a sound Marcus had learned meant understanding. They're not going to let me keep you, Marcus continued. The Council, I mean. They'll try to separate us. They'll want to study you, or worse. But I swear, I won't let that happen. You saved my life. Both of you. I won't abandon you. Scout woke up and crawled over, resting her head on Marcus's lap. He scratched behind her head ridges, making her purr contentedly. We're a pack now, Marcus said. Whatever comes next, we face it together. When the beacon activated, the response was immediate. A council ship appeared in orbit within hours, and a shuttle descended toward the landing zone. Marcus watched it approach, the void crystal secure in his pack, Titan standing beside him like a living mountain, Scout at his other side. The shuttle landed, and the hatch opened. Vexthor emerged, accompanied by a squad of armed guards. The commander's crystalline eyes widened when he saw Marcus standing there, alive and whole. Then he saw Titan and Scout. Impossible, Vexthor whispered. The Reavers, you tamed them? Tamed? Marcus laughed, the sound harsh. No, Commander. I befriended them. There's a difference. These are Titan and Scout, and they're coming with me. Absolutely not. Vexthor's mandibles clicked furiously. Those creatures are dangerous. They've killed dozens of armed warriors who came to this planet to kill them first, Marcus interrupted. He pulled out the void crystal, holding it up. I have what you wanted. My sentence is complete. And according to galactic law, any companions acquired during a survival trial are the property of the survivor. Vexthor hesitated. Marcus could see the calculations running behind those alien eyes. Killing Marcus now would be difficult to explain, especially with the achievement of returning from Kragath Prime. But allowing him to keep the Reavers. The Council will never approve this, Vexthor said. Then the Council can explain to the galactic community why they're executing a human who completed an impossible task, Marcus replied. I'm sure Earth's representatives would love to hear that explanation. Along with the truth about why I was sent here in the first place. It was a bluff, partially. Marcus had no proof of the frame job. But the doubt in Vexthor's expression suggested the commander knew something. There will be conditions, Vexthor said finally. Restrictions on where you can go. Monitoring. Acceptable, Marcus agreed. As long as Titan and Scout stay with me. Titan rumbled a warning as the guards moved closer. They immediately backed away, weapons raised but clearly terrified. Scout positioned herself between Marcus and the threat, growling. Call off your guards, Marcus said. We're all going to walk onto that shuttle peacefully. And then we're going to have a very interesting conversation with the Council. Vexthor clicked his mandibles in what might have been respect or might have been resignation. Very well. But Marcus Kane, you have made yourself a very dangerous enemy this day. Marcus smiled, cold and hard. Commander, I spent 30 days surviving hell with nothing but my wits and will. You don't scare me anymore. None of you do. He climbed onto Titan's back, and Scout fell into step beside them. Together, they walked toward the shuttle, toward whatever future awaited them. The human who had been sent to die was coming home. And he was bringing the beasts with him. The council chamber fell silent as Marcus entered with Titan and Scout flanking him. The assembled representatives, dozens of species from across the galaxy, stared in shock. Some reached for weapons. Others simply stared, unable to process what they were seeing. Vexthor stood before the council seat, his crystalline eyes fixed on Marcus with barely controlled fury. The council recognizes Marcus Kane, who has returned from Kragath Prime. With the requested void crystal, Marcus added, pulling out the glowing fragment and placing it on the evidence platform. As agreed, my crimes are to be forgiven, my record cleared. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members leaned forward, examining the crystal with evident disbelief. This is authentic, one of them confirmed, an elderly being whose species Marcus didn't recognize. But the creatures are my companions, Marcus interrupted. Acquired legally during the trial. Galactic law is clear on this matter. Galactic law never anticipated someone surviving Kragath Prime, much less befriending its apex predators. Vexthor snarled. These creatures are dangerous. They cannot be allowed into civilized space. Marcus let the silence hang for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. These creatures saved my life multiple times. They showed me more loyalty and honor than this council did when you sent me to die. You were given a trial, Vexthor began. I was given a death sentence. Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. You sent me to Kragath Prime because you thought it was an easy way to execute a human without political consequences. You wanted me dead, Commander. Admit it. Vexthor's mandibles clicked, but he said nothing. The silence was damning. Marcus continued, addressing the entire council now. What I found on Kragath Prime wasn't mindless monsters. I found an intelligent species with complex social structures, family bonds, and honor. Titan here fought to the death protecting his offspring. When I helped them, they helped me. They guided me through their territory, shared their food, and kept me safe. He turned to face the assembled representatives. You all treat Kragath Prime as a dumping ground for the unwanted. But you're wrong about what lives there. And you're wrong about a lot of other things too. Careful, human, Vexthor warned. You stand on thin ice. No, Commander. You do. Marcus pulled out a data chip. During my time on Kragath Prime, I found wreckage from previous expeditions. Including this, a partial log from the last official mission to the planet. He activated the chip. A holographic recording appeared, showing a Vorlak commander speaking into a log recorder. The message was garbled, but certain words came through clearly, ambushed, not by creatures. Council forces, frame job, mining rights. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted over each other, demanding explanations. Vexthor's crystalline form seemed to darken. That proves nothing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. It proves enough to warrant an investigation, Marcus replied. An investigation into why the Council has been sending people to Kragath Prime. An investigation into the mining operations you've been conducting illegally on the planet's southern continent. Operations that have been displacing the Reavers from their natural habitats, forcing them to become more aggressive. Marcus had found evidence of the mining camps during his journey, but he pieced together the larger picture from what the Crystal Guardian had shown him. The Void Crystal wasn't just a power source, it was part of Kragath Prime's ecosystem. Removing it in large quantities was devastating the planet. The Reavers aren't monsters, Marcus said. They're victims. You've been destroying their world, and they've been defending it. The only monsters here are the ones who've been profiting from this operation. Vexthor lunged toward Marcus, his control finally snapping. Titan moved faster, placing himself between the commander and Marcus. The massive Reaver's roar shook the chamber, and Vexthor froze, suddenly face to face with several tons of protective fury. Stand down, one of the senior council members commanded. All of you. The council descended into chaos as accusations flew and alliances shifted. Marcus watched it all, feeling a grim satisfaction. He'd exposed the truth, or at least enough of it to force a reckoning. Hours later, after intense deliberations, the council reached a verdict. Vexthor was stripped of his position and placed under arrest, along with 3 other council members implicated in the illegal mining operation. Kragath Prime was declared a protected world, off-limits to exploitation. Marcus's record was cleared, and he was offered a formal apology. More importantly, Titan and Scout were recognized as sentient beings with rights under galactic law. They were granted citizenship status, tied to Marcus as their legal guardian. "You've caused quite an upheaval, Marcus Kane," the senior council member told him after the session ended. She was a being called Elder Thorn, her species known for their fairness and wisdom. "The ramifications of this will echo across the galaxy for years." "Good," Marcus replied. "Maybe it'll make you think twice before sending someone to die just because it's convenient." Elder Thorn's expression, difficult to read on her alien features, might have been approval. "What will you do now? Return to Earth?" Marcus looked at Titan and Scout. The massive Reaver and his offspring had waited patiently through the entire proceeding, though Scout had gotten bored toward the end and tried to chew on a chair. "No," Marcus said. "I'm going back to Kragath Prime. There's work to be done there, stopping the illegal mining, documenting the Reaver culture, helping to repair the damage that's been done. Someone needs to be their advocate, their voice in the council." "A noble purpose," Elder Thorn said. "You'll have the council's support. And Marcus? You've proven that humanity has a place among the stars. Don't let us forget it." 3 months later, Marcus stood on Kragath Prime once more, but the world looked different now. A research station had been established, small, respectful of the planet's ecosystems, staffed by scientists and xenoanthropologists eager to study the Reavers properly. Marcus had become the liaison between the researchers and the Reavers, using his bond with Titan and Scout to facilitate communication. It was slow work, building trust between species, but progress was being made. Titan had brought his entire pack to meet the humans, a group of 12 adult Reavers and their offspring. The researchers were terrified at first, but Marcus stood between the two groups and showed them there was nothing to fear. Scout had become something of a celebrity. The young Reaver loved attention and had learned to recognize individual humans. She had a particular fondness for the head researcher, a woman named Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, who always brought treats, hunks of the local fauna that Scout found delicious. Marcus stood on a cliff overlooking the central spire as the sun set on Kragath Prime. The sky was painted in purples and golds, and for the first time, he found the planet beautiful rather than terrifying. Titan approached, settling beside Marcus with a contented rumble. Scout bounded up moments later, covered in mud from exploring one of the creeks. "We did it," Marcus said, scratching behind Titan's head ridge. "We changed everything. Who would have thought? A human, sent to die on a hostile world, comes back and upends the entire Galactic Council." Titan made a sound that Marcus had learned was Reaver laughter. "Yeah, I guess it is pretty funny when you put it that way," Marcus agreed. His communicator beeped. A message from Elder Thorn, "New assignment available. Disputed territory on the Rim Worlds. Council needs an impartial mediator. Someone with experience in impossible situations. Interested?" Marcus read it aloud to Titan and Scout. The massive Reaver stood, stretching. Scout clicked excitedly, already moving toward where they'd left their transport. "Guess that's a yes," Marcus laughed. He typed back, "We'll take it. But we come as a package deal." The response was immediate, "Wouldn't have it any other way." Marcus looked out over Kragath Prime one last time before they left. The planet that was supposed to be his grave had become his home, and the creatures that were supposed to kill him had become his family. The council had sent him to die, expecting the hostile world to destroy him. Instead, he'd returned with the apex predators as his companions and changed the galaxy in the process. As they boarded the transport, Marcus Kane smiled. The stars were vast, filled with unknowns and dangers. But he'd faced the worst the galaxy could throw at him and survived. And he'd done it by choosing compassion over fear, understanding over violence, and friendship over hate. The human and his beasts lifted off into the purple sky, heading toward their next adventure. Whatever challenges awaited them among the stars, they would face them together. After all, they were pack now. And pack never abandoned each other. The end.